In the gritty streets of Manila during the 1980s, a time when corruption and lawlessness often overshadowed justice, rose a man whose only language of law was the bullet. Batas Ko Ay Bala begins with the classic FPJ atmosphere: smoke-filled alleys, jeepneys roaring through the night, and a city drowning under the weight of crime and greed. The man behind the gun. FPJ plays Ben Sagrado, a principled police officer known across the force for his sharp instincts, unshakable integrity, and his refusal to bow to political pressure. The title, Batas Ko Ay Bala, becomes his mantra, not because he loves violence, but because the corrupt system around him has left him no other choice. Ben believes that justice cannot survive in a world ruled by those who manipulate the law. His father, a retired officer himself, taught him that a man's word is his law, and his courage is his weapon. But in modern Manila, that ideal has been twisted. The criminals wear suits, not masks. The real enemies aren't just the ones who rob banks, they sit behind desks in government offices. A city of shadows. The first act paints a portrait of a society at its breaking point. Crime bosses, smugglers, and politicians work together, profiting off fear and control. One of the city's most feared crime lords is Don Faustino, Eddie Garcia, a businessman on the surface, but a ruthless trafficker beneath. He controls the black market, the police, and even the local courts. Ben's team, his loyal friend, SGT Dado, and rookie cop Mario, often clash with Faustino's men. But every time they try to make an arrest, the suspects are freed by orders from the top. It's a cycle Ben can no longer tolerate. The breaking point. When Ben discovers that Don Faustino's syndicate was responsible for the death of his younger brother, a law student who tried to expose government corruption, something inside him shatters. The system that he swore to serve has betrayed him. The film takes a darker turn as Ben's grief transforms into fury. The once calm and composed officer becomes a lone crusader, willing to face the entire establishment. The line between justice and revenge begins to blur. In one of the movie's most memorable scenes, Ben visits his brother's grave under the rain. With clenched fists, he vows, "Kung hindi ko makuha ang hustisya sa batas, kukunin ko sa aking paraan. Ang batas ko ay bala." If I can't get justice from the law, I'll take it my way. My law is the bullet. One man versus the system. Ben resigns from the police force, leaving behind his badge but keeping his gun, the only weapon he trusts. He begins a one-man war against Don Faustino's empire. Each encounter is brutal, personal, and fueled by moral conviction. The film balances intense gunfights with emotional storytelling. FPJ's performance radiates pain, discipline, and dignity, traits that made him not just an action star, but a symbol of the Filipino spirit. Love in the crossfire. Amidst the chaos, Ben finds solace in Lorna, a journalist determined to expose Faustino's operations. Their chemistry adds a human layer to the story. Two people caught in the storm, clinging to their ideals in a collapsing world. But Lorna's involvement also makes her a target. In one haunting scene, Faustino's men attack her home, forcing Ben to arrive too late. It's this moment that cements Ben's transformation from an enforcer of the law to its avenger. Climactic tension. By the end of Part 1, Ben's vengeance has cost him everything: his badge, his friends, and the woman he loved. Yet he stands stronger, his mission clearer than ever. Faustino's empire begins to crumble, but not without bloodshed. The final moments of Part 1 show Ben standing on a rooftop overlooking Manila. The city lights shimmer below him as his voice narrates, "Wala nang natitirang batas sa mundong ito. Kung gusto mong mabuhay, matuto kang lumaban." There's no law left in this world. If you want to live, you must learn to fight. As he loads his gun and walks into the night, the screen fades to black. setting the stage for a second act that promises full-scale retribution. Analysis and impact of Part 1. The first part of Batas Ko Ay Bala captures FPJ at his rawest, an embodiment of Filipino resilience and defiance. The movie is not just a revenge story, it's a social commentary on how justice becomes meaningless when controlled by the powerful. Pablo Santiago's gritty direction, paired with FPJ's stoic acting, created a film that resonated deeply with audiences during its release. The dialogues became iconic, echoing the frustrations of everyday Filipinos who saw their own struggles mirrored in Ben Sagrado's fight. The movie earned strong box office numbers upon release, becoming one of the top-grossing Filipino action films of its year. FPJ's role cemented his reputation as the king of Filipino cinema, a man whose characters always fought for the common people.
As Batas Ko Ay Bala second act begins, Ben Sagrado, FPJ, is no longer the uniformed officer the people once admired. He's become something else, a lone warrior shaped by loss, betrayal, and rage. His name now circulates through the underground like a whisper, a ghost with a gun, striking down men who thought themselves untouchable. The streets that once mocked him now fear him. Corrupt police generals, syndicate leaders, and smug politicians start to realize that Ben's vengeance isn't random. It's a systematic purge. One by one, he dismantles Don Faustino's empire, cutting off his operations, rescuing kidnapped workers, and exposing the syndicate's network through his late lover, Lorna's unfinished journalistic work. Still, each act of vengeance weighs on him. The movie begins to show the emotional and psychological toll of his mission. In one gripping scene, Ben looks at himself in the mirror, whispering, "Ang batas na sinusunod ko ngayon ay batas ng isang taong wala nang natira, kundi galit. The law I follow now is the law of a man who has nothing left but anger." FPJ plays this scene with deep restraint, a quiet storm behind his eyes, revealing the humanity behind the violence. The rise of a legend. Don Faustino, Eddie Garcia, meanwhile, tightens his grip on what remains of his empire. He unleashes a private army led by Colonel Ramirez, a corrupt police chief who once worked with Ben. The contrast between the two men, one still clinging to false authority, the other guided only by moral justice, builds toward an inevitable confrontation. In the film's midsection, Manila turns into a war zone. Gunfights erupt in marketplaces, docks, and narrow alleys. FPJ's action choreography here is raw, realistic, and intensely personal. Each bullet fired isn't spectacle, it's judgment. The people, long oppressed by fear, start rooting for Ben. He becomes a vigilante symbol, a living rebellion against the corrupt. Graffiti appears across walls. Ben Sagrado, ang tunay na batas. Ben Sagrado, the true law. Lorna's death, still echoing through flashbacks, fuels Ben's resolve. The movie slows down just enough to remind the audience that this isn't about revenge alone. It's about restoring balance in a world that abandoned justice. The final confrontation. The climax of Batas Ko Ay Bala builds slowly, through tension rather than dialogue. Ben infiltrates Don Faustino's heavily guarded mansion. The night is silent, save for the faint sound of crickets and distant thunder. FPJ's signature silhouette, the cowboy-like stride, the revolver gleaming under dim light, evokes both myth and reality. Inside, Faustino sits in arrogance, surrounded by his guards. He mocks Ben through a security feed. "Hindi mo kayang labanan ng batas, Ben. Ako ang batas dito." "You can't fight the law, Ben. I am the law here." To which Ben replies, before cutting off the camera feed, Baka nakalimutan mo doon. Ang batas ko ay bala. Maybe you forgot, Don. My law is the bullet. What follows is one of the most intense action sequences in 1980s Filipino cinema. FPJ storms the compound, taking out armed men with calculated precision. The editing is sharp and deliberate, emphasizing realism over glamour. No unnecessary dialogue, no fancy tricks, just raw, relentless justice. The final duel between Ben and Don Faustino is symbolic. Faustino pleads, offering money and power. Ben says nothing. He only raises his gun. The shot echoes through the empty mansion. Justice, in its purest and most painful form, has been served. The aftermath. After the smoke clears, Ben walks through the burning remains of Faustino's empire. He doesn't smile. There's no triumph, only silence. The film doesn't glorify vengeance. It exposes its cost. As dawn breaks, Ben returns to his brother's grave. The sky glows gold, a new day for the city. He places his revolver beside the headstone, finally letting go. Tapos na ang batas ko. Sana ngayon, magsimula na ang tunay na batas. My law is over. I hope now the real law can begin. And in a powerful closing shot, Ben walks away, fading into the rising light, not as a hero, but as a man who gave up everything for justice. Behind the scenes and legacy. Production and directorial vision. Director Pablo Santiago and FPJ's collaboration on Batas Ko Ay Bala marked another high point in their long creative partnership. Santiago's direction emphasized realism, handheld cameras during shootouts, minimal slow motion, and natural lighting to make the story feel grounded. The production faced challenges due to limited budgets, but FPJ was known for performing his own stunts. Many of the fight scenes were shot without doubles, including the explosive finale where actual pyrotechnics were used to destroy the set. Earnings and box office. Upon release, Batas Ko Ay Bala was a massive commercial success in the Philippines. It was one of the highest-grossing local action films of 1987, earning millions in its opening weeks. The film's promotional poster, with FPJ standing against flames, revolver raised, became an iconic image of Filipino action cinema. The movie also drew long queues across Manila, Cebu, and Davao, with theaters running extended showings due to high demand. Critical reception. Critics praised FPJ's restrained yet powerful performance. Instead of portraying a typical action hero, he played Ben Sagrado as a tragic figure, a man torn between law and morality. Eddie Garcia's portrayal of Don Faustino was equally lauded for its menace and sophistication. The movie's message that justice must sometimes come from the people when institutions fail resonated deeply during the politically volatile late 80s in the Philippines. Awards and recognition. Batas Ko Ay Bala earned several nominations at the FAMAS Awards, including Best Actor, Fernando Poe Jr., Best Supporting Actor, Eddie Garcia, Best Director, Pablo Santiago, Best Screenplay, Jimmy Tagaloa. Though it did not sweep all categories, the film solidified FPJ's status as the king, the face of Filipino heroism and integrity in cinema. Cultural impact. Over the years, Batas Ko Ay Bala became more than a movie. It became a statement. Lines from the film entered Filipino pop culture, especially FPJ's defiant line, "Ang batas ko ay bala." It's often quoted in political contexts, memes, and tributes, symbolizing resistance against corruption. FPJ's portrayal of the everyman hero continued to influence generations of Filipino action stars, including Bong Revilla, Rudy Fernandez, and Lito Lapid. Conclusion: the bullet and the code. In the end, Batas Ko Ay Bala isn't just about one man's revenge. It's about a society's longing for justice in the face of decay. FPJ's Ben Sagrado became an archetype of the Filipino hero, stoic, moral, yet humanly flawed. The film's legacy continues decades later, reminding audiences that sometimes the fight for justice requires breaking the very systems built to protect it. As Ben said before his final battle, "Hindi ko sinasabing tama ang ginagawa ko, pero ito lang ang naiintindihan ng mga katulad nila." And with that, Batas Ko Ay Bala became immortal, a bullet fired not just from a gun, but from the heart of a man who refused to surrender to injustice.